Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Chattin with CHAP. I am your host, Ginger Wade, and today I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Isabel Tom, and she is going to just get us passionate about being with the generations, all the generations in our family. I mean, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. You've heard me talk about this before, and how as homeschoolers, we have a very unique ability to build relationship between generations and learn from each other. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. So Isabel, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks,
And
Ginger.
sure thing. And would you tell us a little bit about yourself, your passions, why you're doing what you're doing? Let our audience know a little bit more about you.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm a mom of three. I'm a wife, and I call myself a retired grandchild because growing up, I grew up in a multi-generational household, lived with my two parents, my two older sisters, and then my mama and yaya. So that's my paternal grandparents and Cantonese. And they lived in our house before I was even born, and I lived in the same house with them until I was 26, literally the day before I got married. Lived in the same house with them, but I also have a background in senior care. So, graduated from college, had a business degree, didn't expect to work with older people, but that's where I was able to get a job, right? And God really use that experience to show me a lot about the value of the older generation, helped me see the value of my own grandparents. I grew up living with them but didn't really always appreciate having them there, I would say. And so this is something that I think, while a lot of kids have older people in their lives, grandparents in their lives, they might not appreciate it, but I want parents to know that it is one of the best gifts to be able to give your kids. They might not see it till later on, but if you can develop that relationship with an older adult, a grandparent is just golden.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, our society really doesn't, we don't value those relationships, right?
Yeah.
We don't value the older, the honor them and the wisdom that they've created, but we also don't value the younger, um, particularly the unborn, but even the younger children. It's having children is not something that's like held up anymore, right?
Hmm.
So to have a family, to be building a family and have parents who are living that you can connect together is precious, because in
Yeah.
our society it doesn't exist as much as it used to, which is it's like heartbreaking, right? So
Yeah.
what's going to come in the future here? So what, like, why is this, are these relationships important? Like, God put us in our families, and I know, like you said, you didn't always appreciate your grandparents
Yeah.
being there.
Hmm.
I mean, siblings annoy us, some parents annoy us, whatever, we all get annoyed with each other, but that's relationship, right? That's
Yeah.
life. God designed our families, he put us together for a reason. There's a reason he has us all put together in this family. I'm
Hmm.
not in your family, and whatever, like, our families are designed in a certain way for a reason.
Hmm.
So, like, what do you think? What's my question here? Like, what is the value in working through this? Why work on these relationships? Why stay connected to the grandparents? Why,
Hmm.
in also in the United States, we don't stay put anymore. We're
Yeah.
like all over the place, like across the nation, whatever. Now, that's not true. Where I live in Lancaster County, we kind of like move 5 feet down the road and live there. So I'm like the furthest one away, and I live a half an hour away from my parents. So,
Yeah.
anyway, that was kind of a whole lot of stuff. But what is this value in building these relationships? Like, why? Why should we? Why do we put effort into this?
Yeah. I mean, I have about 15 reasons that I could give you, but I'll try to give you the top ones. Um, first of all, I think in the Bible, it tells us to honor our father and mother, right? And I think we talk about that a lot and spout out that, commandment a lot. But I think this is a very practical way to obey that commandment is when you have your kids connected to their grandparents, it's a way to honor them. And I think the grandparents are very honored when we take the time, no matter how messy we are in trying to get it done. Um, they really they really appreciate the fact that we even just initiate and try to make that connection. They know we are busy. I think apart from that, just practically, I mean, the benefits of it are one. your kids, and I have listened to some of your episodes about intergenerational learning, and I think our kids need real life learning. And so um, connecting them with their grandparents is a great way to teach them social skills, but I would say it's a great way to help them to learn how to relate to people who are different than them. And that's not just older people, but you can't get more different than being born in different generations, being born in different backgrounds, having a completely different hobbies, way of life, and things like that. But when you can teach your kids to relate to their grandparents, one, it is one of the safest places, most gracious relationships for them to learn their social skills. And I know a lot of parents have kids who have special needs. Grandparents, you can tell them that their hair looks ugly and they'll probably laugh at their grandchild. Like, what happened to your hair? And the grandparents will be like, oh, that's just my grandchild. So I think it's one of the most gracious environments for kids to learn social skills. And then I would say, if you are looking at it from a parent standpoint who is very busy, um, most adult children, we are going to be the ones who are going to be caring for our parents as they get older. And the problem nowadays is that so many caregivers are stressed out. But for me, I was an adult grandchild, and I actually took a huge part in walking my grandparents to the end of life. And I think that we want to include grandchildren in this village to care for our older generation because, number one, they are so capable. They really boost the mood, and they can improve the quality of life of an older person. And so I think parents want to have that relationship. Maybe they don't see it right now, but that is going to be something that really helps them so that they are not the only ones who are carrying it. They can ask the grandkids to, whether it's just like, I gave my grandpa and grandma a hug every night, literally till I was like 26. And I know that that's emotional care for them. It meant a lot to them, right? So I want parents to understand that this is totally not just a fun activity, and that it's just building their kids up, but also a way to honor their parents.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that emotional care. Like, I don't think we realize the depth of importance of, like you said, a
Oh yeah.
hug or
Mm-hmm.
I love you, good night, or, at the very least, acknowledging another's presence, right? But that touch is so important too. And I love what you said about it being a grace-filled space to
Yeah.
learn to interact with. Because I just remember, I think about my experiences. One of the reasons I wanted to homeschool was my experiences in school were very hurtful to me. The
Yeah.
social experiences were very hurtful to me. And I see it now, like as a coach, as a drama teacher, welcoming in families to our homeschooling communities who used to be public school, but when COVID happened and they just started to homeschool, and just the hurts, and I recognize it because I went through it. Um, but learning to communicate and um, be with other people in a place where you're going to be loved. You're going to be loved
Yeah.
no matter what. You could have a faux pas, maybe say something you shouldn't say,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. But it's not a place where you're going to be disdained or scorned or made fun of or
Exactly.
kicked out of the group. That's huge. I never thought of that before. That is such a wonderful point.
Well, I don't know if this is going to be broadcasted or released with video, but you can see my glasses are like super thick. And so I got my glasses when I was 2. And so it's not like I was like a super cool kid or anything like that. But,
Yeah.
growing up, I had, I knew that I was loved. I mean, I don't think I really knew how dorky on the outside I looked because I knew that no matter what, I had grandparents who are at home. I had parents who are at home, but I say that grandparents, they offer this extra layer of love, attention, availability that helps our kids to be resilient. It helps them to know that they are loved. I mean, yeah, maybe your grandparents are not the most popular people, they're not your peers, but just to have another, kids need to know they are loved, to be able to thrive, to be able to try new things, right? And so, maybe grandparents won't get all the praise or anything like that, but it really is something that if you have grandparents there, like you want to utilize that because um, kids are so much more confident when they know they've got like a fan base, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even in my parents pour into their grandkids, into their family a lot.
Yeah.
And then, but also just creating meals. Meal times are great, right? For
Hmm.
connection and this habit of being together. But then that opens the possibility of them speaking into my parents speaking into their life.
Hmm.
You know, like where, you know, they're athletes. And my dad was an athlete. So he could speak into them and like that, you know, think about this or think about that, or with their faith, you know, and those types of things. So um there's knowledge there or life experiences that parents can grandparents can share that say I don't have,
Hmm.
because it's their perspective, it's a different perspective. And of course as you get older you have maybe hopefully a better perspective on life and important things in life than those of us who are younger and full of busy, which I wrote that word down too. You mentioned being too busy or we're
Yeah.
really busy. But Isabel, isn't this something that is just really worth looking through your schedule and saying, this has to be a priority? Like,
Yeah.
is this something that's worth saying, okay, busy? You know, that was one of the good things about COVID is it wiped everything out.
Hmm.
And you were at home and that's what you were doing, right? You were together. Hopefully you could see your grandparents depending on your situation. But um, is it valuable, do you think, important? Is this important enough for parents to put time into figuring out how to carve stuff out of the schedule to leave open space to make this happen?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I definitely think that this is something worth putting as a top priority. You know, it is not something, usually you're looking at your schedule and you're just trying to get through the week. But I think if you're looking at life, if you're looking at long term, your child's development, their mental health, I think it is something that, you know, it actually doesn't take that much. We think that it does, but I think our kids just need to know that they have grandparents that are there. I mean, the first part is exposure, right? Having them around the grandparents. But then, you know, I think there are ways to do it that don't even require the grandparents to be around. So my kids don't live with their grandparents. And so I do a lot of prompting where I'm talking with them about their grandparents. And my dad passed away 10 years ago. So I talk a lot about my dad and lessons that they can learn from my dad. But my dad's not here, right? And I can do that with their grandma, who, you know, she's a very busy, active, older adult. And so I'll say something like, you know what? Um, we haven't seen her very much, but that's because she's been traveling. She likes adventure. She's been doing woodwork and all these different things. And so I'm able to show them a real life example that teaches them. It's opportunity for really great discussion. And I think what our kids really need these days is to have a long-term perspective. So everything they see is like, oh, can I buy this tomorrow? Can I do this week? Can I, you know, and when you have an older person there, whether you talk about it or not, whether they impart wisdom or not, you give them a picture, a real life example of the fact that life is it's a long game, right? So they see everything from health and how that affects you, decisions that you make and choices that you make and how that affects you. And so I think just having older people in the conversation in your life is just, it's something that we don't think about, but I think it's very important to incorporate.
I love that. Like I hadn't thought about that in this, but like you said, like even just parents just discussing, like
Hmm.
me discussing my parents, my husband discussing his parents and life growing up with them or what they're doing now or how they're serving others. There's
Yeah.
busy, grandma's so busy, we can't see her. Well, she's out serving others and using the gifts that God has given her, right?
Yeah.
To serve here. And that's really great too, because yeah, like sometimes it just isn't possible
It's not
either
possible.
because we're busy or they're on the other side of the country
Hmm.
or you know in another country. So just talking about the older generations too in a positive, really good way draws that connection too.
Yeah, what it
um
does is, sorry, I just wanted to add this
no,
in,
go
is
right ahead.
what it does is some kids are long distance, their grandparents are long distance. And so you may think that they can't have a close relationship with their grandparents. But when you talk about them when they're not there, it makes it easier. So they already know something about their grandparents so that when they are together, you can say something like, remember how I told you how grandma does this every week? She goes and visits friends and blah, 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 blah. It gives them that comfort level. So it's not that they're meeting with a stranger. They already know their grandparents.
Yes. Yeah, that's really great. I love that. So you had mentioned a few things about how we can build up this habit. We're talking with our kids about um the parents so that when they do actually get together,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you said, it's not a stranger, it's just
Yeah.
someone that you feel like you can jump into. So what are some of the things like when they are together or when they do get that opportunity to be, whether it's this way, it could be just on Zoom, it could be
Yeah.
on Skype, or a picnic, a reunion, or whatever. How are some of the ways that kids can interact with their grandparents? Like if they don't say they, you might be able to interact with, if you're not near your grandparents, there's older people at church or somewhere you might be volunteering, or if you visit nursing homes. But if you aren't, how do kids know, or give some examples of things that kids can do to reach out and
Mm-hmm.
connect with the older generation? Like if they don't get any interaction,
Yeah.
what's a way to make that bridge?
Okay, so I mean, I talked about just talking about them first. For example, if a child is afraid of a dog, you start by just exposure level. You just start talking about it first, right? And then when they are with the older person, with an older person at church, or let's say you see somebody, you prompt them. You've got to guide them. If somebody is not familiar, if a child's not familiar with a relationship, we have to give them guidance. So, I mean, I created something called the Grandkid Investigator Kit over the past 2 years because I realized that kids, they need help with the guidance. It's not that they don't want to talk to
Want to?
somebody
Yeah,
sometimes,
yeah, yeah.
they just have no idea what to
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
And so, what I love about kids is they love asking questions. So, I want kids to know that it's okay to ask an older person questions. And in fact, I always say when you ask them, you honor them. You know, you acknowledge them. And so, I had created these missions, which is basically like prompted, guided worksheets where they are asking, you know, I have like Operation Marshmallow, and they are asking an older person, their grandparent, um, you know, do you like sweet or salty? Do you like things sweet or salty? Do you like eating out? Do you like eating in? And basically, it takes away that pressure of, okay, you have to talk to the grandparents, and they're thinking, I have no idea what to say. I don't like this because this is uncomfortable, you know. And so, what I ended up doing is finding out that kids, they have this ability to one, pull out really fun facts from grandparents that grandparents aren't necessarily going to share with their adult children. You know, we always think of that conversation as tell us a piece of wisdom from your 84 years of life. Well, it doesn't have to be that, right? It can just be like, you know, I was talking the other day with somebody about how one of the grandkid investigators figured out that her grandparents have a sweet tooth. And being able to allow an older person, a grandparent, to share even just stories like, yeah, I used to sneak candy from the candy jar. That wasn't a good thing, but you know, this is a type of candy I really, really loved. You know, to go down that path, to go down that those rabbit trails, and helping kids to realize, one, their grandparents are more than just an old person who has a history book, who's a history book, but that they are a person right now, and to allow kids to ask questions. So the I prompt kids, and then I allow them to ask more questions. Do you have any more questions for them? And they may start asking other questions like, wait, you said that you didn't have any AC. Like, what did you do then when it was really hot outside, you know? And what I found is just by helping kids in the beginning to ask questions, later on, other times when we're interacting, they actually know things about their grandparents. So it was my birthday recently, and I said something about one of the, um, my mother-in-law, and my son said, no, we need to get her a carrot cake. She said she likes carrot cake. And I realized that was from one of my missions. That was from Operation Cake. He already learned something about his grandmother, and that was a way to prompt them into learning new things about them. And I think it can just be fun. I think we need to make it fun for them to want to interact with them, right? So sometimes you need that extra bit of motivation, just like you would maybe have a treat after you go to ballet class to help your kid, right? To make it more enjoyable in the beginning when it's harder.
So for those families out there, like homeschool families out there who do have a good connection with grandparents, it's a regular
Yeah.
relationship there. Do you see the value? Is there value in like take it a step further? Hey, can you teach them something, or can you show, bringing them into the educational part of or life skills, whatever, just in the growing up of our children. Um, Once that relationship is well established, or they're very comfortable with each other, or maybe even before they're very comfortable, because maybe this is the way to do it. But is that a good place to go? Is it just to put the ask out there?
Oh,
Would you be
yeah.
interested in coming and teaching the kids something? Like what? Do
Oh,
you have any
yeah.
advice there, thoughts on that?
I mean, I think so. For example, I'm talking about prompting and guiding the conversation. I think if it is conversation is usually the hardest part. But then if you're local to them and you have the opportunity to just have time together, even if they're not talking, right? Just having them do an activity together or teaching them something that adds strengthens the bond, right? So anything, and I think we need to look at the strengths of the grandparents and say, okay, what is he really good at? What is she really good at? Some grandparents are not good at talking with their grandchildren. I mean, they're just not. Some people say they're not kid people, but they have an interest, right? So you may have, we did a bike clinic with grandkids and grandparents. And I remember the guy who was in charge of this bike, it's called the Bike Hub. He is a grandparent himself, and he said, I'm not a chatty person, but if you get me talking about bikes, I can talk, right? And so, what you're trying to do is to put your kids and the grandparents in different situations because that light bulb is, you want that, you want the kids to see their grandparents' passions and to see them light up, right? And the reality is, every person is different. Grandparents have different love languages. They may not be chatty. Maybe they are gift givers. Maybe they're quality time people. Maybe it is literally just having them watch. Maybe you have a video for them to watch, and the grandparent is sitting there with them and watching, and that is quality time. I mean, it's it's valuable because they're sharing an experience. So I think anytime you can build that in is really valuable, especially because as kids are get older, I think grandparents start to feel a little less needed. So when you can strengthen that bond when they're younger, then it makes it more natural as the kids get older to like teenagers to have that relationship.
Yeah, so you had said something in the that made me think. It was mentioned, oh, I'm not so chatty, or I'm not a kid
Hmm.
person. So do you have any advice or thoughts on those who, okay, we're gonna reach out to, you know, Memmy and Papap, and we're gonna, work on being more connected with them. What kind of encouragement can you give someone if Memmy and Papap aren't very receptive, like, or if they're getting started, like it could take a while, right? If it's not a healthy relationship, or if there's
Yeah.
no relationship, or they're not kid, like I had a grandparent who didn't want us grandkids around at all because we were noisy, so
Yeah.
there wasn't a relationship, right? So what if you want to do this, but maybe the grandparent isn't quite, I mean, quite receptive to the idea, or like, how would you approach it then?
Yeah, I did this podcast episode on why and how grandparents are not all kid-friendly people. And that is the reality, right? But I think we shouldn't expect every grandparent to be like that, right? So I think as parents, we have to have a realistic expectation. And one, remember that relationships take time. I mean, your kids do not become best friends with the neighbor right away. It takes time. And so just going in with that expectation, I think, is the number one thing.
Mm.
And then remembering that they have different gifts. But, you can care for an older person. You can show them that you care. Again, I think of the five love languages. It could just be, we're going to send a card to grandma, right? It doesn't require that response. But it is just you showing them. And I think ultimately, I tell parents, if this is hard because there's not a healthy relationship, you are teaching your kids how to care for you when you're older. So if the grandparents are not responding and maybe there is a lot of baggage in that relationship, you can still love from a distance. You don't have to be best friends with them, but just showing that you will still honor them, you'll still care for them. I think, and it also opens for great conversation because this is relationships. Not everybody is going to be receptive to you, right? When you reach out. So I think it is just a real life example that helps them in life to know that this is life.
Yeah, yeah, that's very good. That's very good. Because yeah, that not like you said, this is life. This is real. Not everything
Mhm.
is sunshine
Mhm.
and roses as we're going through. And then that's good to learn how to persevere, really, because this is a relationship that's valuable and worth putting effort into it. So persevering and enduring through. Because our attention spans are so short
Yes.
these days, and our desire to work at something hard or challenging is we don't have a lot of fortitude for that sort of thing. But this is definitely something that is
Yeah.
beneficial.
I mean, I want to add too that there are grandparents who care, but one of the reasons why it's hard to connect is because they want to share everything, and sometimes they want to share these like 500-page memoirs or 3-hour videos that are like, whoa, don't really work for our kids, right? Because they're short, their attention spans are short, and that's why like when I have you know. I developed something to have them ask questions that just get the short facts that whet their appetite, that help them to know that their grandparents are very interesting. And then they can ask more questions later on. But I think first we're trying to teach our kids, oh, they're interesting people, and to give depth, to show them that their grandparents had depth. And then later on, the more questions will come, like that relationship or that interaction will be more natural to ask questions, or even just to ask you questions. Maybe they won't ask the
Yeah.
grandparent questions.
Oh, this is so good. So, okay, we're gonna move into wrapping up, but
Sure.
if if there's one thing you want everyone to take away from this concept of, building these multi-generational relationships and things, like what is it that you want people to hear about this? What is your heart
Hmm.
regarding this topic?
Whew, that's tough. Um, I would say that, um, just like what you said in the beginning, that God made people of all ages. And so there is a very good reason why he has grandparents still living and still here. And so we definitely, that relationship is not something that's going to be here forever. So to remember that there is a time urgency to this. So, yes, I know you want to do math. I know you think that this is urgent too, and reading and literature and all of that. But with the grandparents, I mean, it's a hard question to ask, but you don't know if you're going to have another summer with them. And that's just the reality. The average age of the mortality rate in the US is, I think, 78 years of age. So even just take that as a indicator of how much time you may have left. I mean, you don't want to look back and say, oh, I wish we asked them these questions. No matter how inadequate you feel at this, any any step that you take to get to know them more, it's going to be really, um, it's going to be appreciated by the older person because they're like, wow, somebody's acknowledging me. And that's something that doesn't happen in this world. So I would say to remember that it's an urgent thing.
Mhm. Oh, that's very good. That's very good. That makes me think. My grandmother's still alive. She's 94.
Oh, wow.
And so of course, my kids would be great grandkids to her. So it's been wonderful to be able to connect with her. And she'll come to our theater performances. She came to, my daughter just graduated. She came to that. So she's connected in, she's still coming and attending things, of course, over the years with, you know, let's do biography research papers. Oh, let's go interview Mama. So I took, my one daughter went in and interviewed, her granddaughter interviewing her grandmother and talked about her life, and obviously tremendously different
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
between their ages. So that has been wonderful. So, I was just thinking about that too. If you're looking for things homeschool wise that would work, doing an interview or learning like a history, like it's living history right there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm,
Right
mm-hmm.
there in front of you, just to talk about the life they lived through and what it was like. My grandma lived through the Depression and World War II, and that's,
Mm-hmm.
we study those things in books, and here's a person that
Yes.
lived it. We can talk to them about it. So
It's so much more
um,
fun.
it is, and it makes it real, right? Reading in a book sometimes doesn't make it feel real,
Mm-hmm,
right? If
mm-hmm.
you're talking to someone who lived through it, it makes it very different. So, well, Isabel, I'm so glad you came on today. This has been really great. So I know you have some tools that can help people get these conversations started. Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, where can people find you?
Sure.
What kind of tools do you have for them to help them out?
So, yeah, I have a website, valueofwrinkles.com, and I also have a free mission that if any of your families want to try out one of the missions from the Grandkid Investigator Kit, they can go to valueofwrinkles.com/free mission and try that out. I mean, the Grandkid Investigator Kit is something that homeschool families have used actually to there are 12 missions in it, and they use it as something that is not just to build social skills, but also, there is an educational aspect of it. Um, so they can go to valueofwrinkles.com to check out everything that I have there, and hopefully we can stay connected that way.
That is great. Thank you so much, Isabel, for coming on. I'm really glad you reached out to me. This is really wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to share this message with our folks today. So thanks again. And I hope everyone out there takes Isabel's advice and starts building those relationships. You've heard me talk again and again about the value of relationships. So here's another part to that. So enjoy building those relationships as you continue to follow Christ in all of life, teaching your children to do the same. And I will see you back here on another Tuesday morning. Have a great time, everybody. Enjoy your summers. I will see you later. Bye now.